May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you aware that over the course of the Commonwealth's and your investigation into this case, that the theorized time of the alleged contact of the SUV...
Objection.
So there's two words, just strike theorized.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Are you aware that over the course of the Commonwealth's investigation and your...
Hold on, Mr. Alessi. The court reporter can't hear you.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you.
I'll object again to the question that's coming.
Can I
Go
begin
ahead
my
and
question?
ask an appropriate question, Mr. Alessi.
Sure. Do you have knowledge whether there is one time or more than one time for the Commonwealth's position, as you know it from reading documents that you said you've reviewed, that there are different times alleged for the incident to have occurred at 34 Fairview?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask the question, remove part of it.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
You have to remove part of that sentence.
Okay, understood, Your Honor. Do you know whether there is more than one time that has been proposed by the Commonwealth for the impact alleged to have occurred at 34 Fairview?
Objection.
Sustained.
I'm going to ask for an instruction.
I'm not giving the instruction now.
Dr. Welcher, in terms of the analyses that you have reviewed in this case, is there one time that you understand there to be for a hypothesis for the time of the impact at 34 Fairview?
Objection.
I'm going to see you again, folks. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to move to, for the moment, we'll come back to the other topic a little bit later. As we discussed earlier, you've got on various documents, you're a biomechanical engineer, but I've also heard you make reference to biomedical. Can you just tell me what you consider yourself, sir? Is
Sure.
is biomechanical engineer something you consider yourself to be?
Sure. My degrees are in biomedical engineering. The discipline within biomedical engineering that I practice is biomechanics.
Right. And so is it accurate to say that you are a biomechanical engineer?
Yes.
And you say that much in your report, correct?
And the CV and resume I gave you.
Right. Now, in your report, and Your Honor, I have no issue if he refers to the
Thank you.
page of his report.
Do you have a paper copy or do you need your?
I do.
If you, sir, could turn to page 9 of your report.
Sure.
And on page 9, you state, as a biomechanical engineer, I have no opinion on any aspect of, and I think you're referring to Mr. O'Keefe's, medical treatment or medical diagnoses. I have conducted an accident reconstruction and biomechanical engineering analysis of this matter. Did I read that correctly?
Did?
In that statement, I assume, given you wrote it, is a fair representation of your professional role in this case?
Yes?
And you go on to add on page 9, my biomechanical engineering analysis is determining the effects of physical forces on the human anatomy. Did I read that correct?
You did?
And on your direct examination, is it correct that you stated, as a civil engineer, you made an analogy, you assessed the cables and beams of a bridge, as you would assess the cables and beams of a bridge, you assess the human anatomy, you made that analogy, correct?
The analogy that bones are my bridge elements, cables are muscles and ligaments.
Right. And you stated that it's the job of a biomechanical engineer to quantify the force acting upon a person to determine the cause of their injuries, correct?
That is part of what we do.
It's part of, but it is therefore something that a biomechanical engineer does, correct?
If given sufficient data, yes.
So, you know how to, do you know what a force calculation is, sir, when I refer to that term?
I believe so.
What do you believe it to be?
Well, force is usually a physical measurement, but you can also use Newton's second law, which is force equals mass times acceleration.
That's exactly what I wanted to get to. Newton's second law
Okay.
is, and sometimes referred to as the second law of motion. And in the second law is force equals mass times acceleration, correct?
Correct.
And just sort of like simple algebra, sometimes you have one or more of those, but I'm focusing on when you're trying to determine, sir, you're pulling something out.
Calculator. I thought you were going to ask me numbers, do calculations.
All right, we need to do, if we're going to do that, we need to do it with the court's permission.
Sorry.
So if you feel you need to do that, just let me
You
know.
can just leave it right
All
there.
right.
So I just want to get the principles down first. So Newton's second law, force equals mass times acceleration, and force is oftentimes what you're trying to calculate in a force calculation, correct? Using-
Calculate or measure, yes.
Yeah. And Newton's first law is the law of generally inertia. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. Object in motion tends to stay in motion. We're not talking about that in force. We're talking about Newton's just second law, correct?
You asked me two questions. Newton's first law is generally, as you said, it could be at rest or at constant velocity, but yes.
Okay. And that Newton's second law is generally just a mathematical calculation, correct?
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is to turn to page 11 of your report. And on page 11, you discuss the force calculation in conjunction with the part of your report where you discuss your experiment where you dropped a test dummy backwards, correct?
Correct.
You determined that a fall of 69 inches, at that fall, Mr. O'Keefe's head would have accelerated with 458 G's of force?
That's what we actually measured
Right,
in the test.
and can you tell the jury what is meant by G's?
So G's is a measure of acceleration. If you use the acceleration is measured in feet per second squared. If you divide it by 1 G, which is 32.174 feet per second squared, that gives it to you in G's. People often heard about fighter pilots losing consciousness at 6 or 7 G's, basically because your blood's getting sucked away from your head, not because you're being impacted. But G forces, or G's as they're more properly called, is a measure of the acceleration. It's just whatever the acceleration is divided by what we all feel when we're standing here, which is 1 G of gravity.
And you estimated Mr. O'Keefe's head weight of approximately 15.7 pounds. You used a percentage. Is 15.7 about right for the mass of,
Yes.
of the head? So if we apply Newton's second law, we keep F force open as the unknown. We take and apply the mass, which is 15.7, multiply it by the acceleration. You end up with a force acting upon Mr. O'Keefe's head of 7,200 pounds. Do I have that right? That's right out of your report.
So that math is all correct. Falling backwards onto a hard surface from his standing height will give you approximately 7,200 pounds of force.
In that 7,200 pounds is the previous unknown F in the Newton's second law equation, correct?
Correct.
So now we have an answer for F, 7,200 pounds. Now you then go on to note that the applicable scientific literature states that a fracture to the occipital bone, and just to review, the occipital bone is the back of the head right here, right?
Correct.
So you then, as I understand it, you go to the scientific literature and you concluded that a fracture to the occipital bone can occur with an average force of 1,634 pounds from a fall distance of 40 inches, correct? That- I'm sorry?
How many inches?
40. That's in your report?
Well, you mixed two things together. There was stuff that reported force data. You had those numbers correct. A range of between 1,150 and 2,150, a mean of 1,634 pounds, and then it says, and a drop distance as low as 40 inches.
Right. And is the number 634 pounds a proper number for an average force?
Did you say 1,634 pounds?
1,634.
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to do is see if this is correct. So if you can get a fracture of the occipital bone in an average force of 634 pounds.
No.
I'm sorry.
1,634.
I thought that's what I said. If I did, I missed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just heard 634.
No, 1,634.
My apologies.
And you compare that to the 7,200 pounds of force that you calculated, surely you're going to have a fracture of the occipital bones through that calculation in that comparison, correct?
Correct. Falling on a hard surface can definitely fracture
Right.
your skull.
So I'm not getting at the manner. I'm just applying the Newton's second law. Newton's second law doesn't look at manner, does it? It just looks at force equals mass times acceleration. Newton's second law doesn't look at the surface, does it?
So it's a function of the surface. The A value is a function of the surface you hit.
So you're saying acceleration depends upon the surface?
Yes, of course.
Okay, all right.
For an impact, it does.
Now, let's go to the study you cited. Injuries to pedestrians in real accidents in their relation to collision and car characteristics. That's in your report, correct?
What reference number?
May I, Your Honor, grab the report?
Yes.
If you can, it's in your report, sir. If you can find it, I'll do it in parallel with you.
Is it number 25?
That's the one I think it is. I just want to check your report.
Would you like me to actually pull up the paper?
No,
Okay.
just want to get to the... That's it, number 25. We're talking about the same one. Now, isn't it true that this study states that head injuries are the most common injury type for motor vehicle collisions, constituting more than 61% of all injuries sustained from motor vehicle collisions?
Or can the witness see the document that's being referred to?
Do you have your report in front of you?
I have my report, but reference 25 is not in the section he's referring to.
Why don't you show it to him, Mr. Alessi?
I do not have with me a copy of the report he cites in his reference. He did, can I ask another question, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Welcher, on your direct testimony, did you not discuss the percentage of pedestrian injuries and relate it to heads? Did you not, on your direct, talk about percentages of injuries that are head injuries in impacts of pedestrians with cars?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you came up with a number. What I'm trying to do is to compare that number to the number in the study that you cite. If you don't remember, that's okay. We'll just move to the next question.
Can I go to my slide?
Whatever you can use to determine what was the percentage that's in the study that you cite in footnote 25 of your report.
Sure, that was also from my presentation that I gave. It's 61.5 for all injuries, 12.7 for fatal injuries.
Thank you.
You're
So I'll
welcome.
repeat my question, and then we'll get it in logic. So that study states that head injuries are the most common injury type from motor vehicle collisions, constituting slightly more than 61% of all injuries sustained from motor vehicle collisions, correct?
That number is correct. You're quoting a sentence. I would want to pull the paper up, but the number is correct.
Okay, so doesn't this article also state that of all head injuries sustained by motor vehicle collisions, only 12.7 of them are fatal?
That does, yes.
Did you mention that only 12.7 are fatal on your direct examination?
It's circled with a red box on my slide.
Did you mention that on your testimony on
I
direct?
thought I did.
This article was published back in 1979, correct?
I believe that's correct.
It's 46 years old, therefore, if I did the math correct, right?
That sounds correct.
Are you aware that given advancements in science since 1979, advancements in medicine, advancements in technology, the currently understood most common injuries as a result of pedestrian motor vehicle collisions are injuries to the lower extremities?
I'd have to see the study. It wouldn't surprise me. Car technology, especially, for example, with pedestrian safety systems, has caused autonomous braking. So you're getting fewer higher severity crashes, which results in a higher propensity for lower extremity injuries. It's the higher extremity crash that causes the head to either slap into the hood or the window and or bounce off, to where if you get the lower severity crashes, you can still maintain a standing posture. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's accurate.
So you would agree that as of January 2022, the most common injury as a result of a pedestrian motor vehicle collision is one to lower extremities?
No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that date. And again, you have to look at frontals versus rears.
So you contest that the most commonly understood injury as a result of a pedestrian motor vehicle collision is injuries to lower extremities?
Maybe that's about a source.
No, I'll allow the question.
So I'd want to see the data. Again, most cars, for example, this Lexus has a pre-collision system in it that will start to apply the brakes if it senses a pedestrian at the front of the car. And so for frontal collisions, it's transitioning, taking what were head injuries, because they're more severe, higher speed crashes, making them lower speed crashes and shifting the injuries to the lower extremities. Just like airbags shifted the head injuries away from the severe ones, and we started getting more or higher ankle and lower leg injuries. So the change in the technology, but for backing, that may not be the case because you have different geometry on the vehicles and you have different safety systems.
I'll try it a different way. Do you have knowledge as you sit here today, whether the most common injury from a motor vehicle accident is to the lower extremities?
I'd have to look at the literature.
So-
I have the article I gave you.
So the answer is you don't know the answer to that question. Is that correct, sir?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
All right. Newton's second law analysis that we went through, force equals mass times acceleration, where we came up with the 7,200 number. You didn't discuss that calculation on your direct examination, did you?
I don't think so. We didn't discuss a whole bunch of those things that were that wasn't necessarily an opinion, that was a sub-opinion or basis for my opinion.
You didn't discuss that Newton law calculation on your direct examination, did you, sir?
So in a way I did, because I said my drop testing shows that you can do this. So I didn't quote that number, but we are going through the specific numbers now. But I absolutely did say, as a matter of fact, I showed a video of my drop testing and talked about how falling onto a rigid surface, a hard surface, can cause a skull fracture.
Did you discuss on your direct examination applying 15.7 of the head weight to 458 Gs and come up with a number of 7,200? Did you do that on your direct examination?
Those specific numbers, no.
Thank
The
you.
general concept of the drop testing and what it showed, yes.
So instead of that calculation, you referred to a flow chart comparing injury characteristics of flaws versus blows. Do you recall doing that on your direct?
So you asked me two questions. You said instead of, so that's no, it's not instead of. They're two completely different topics. So no, I didn't do that instead of.
Okay.
I looked at a force analysis, then I looked at 3 peer-reviewed publications that were attempting to differentiate whether an injury is associated with a fall or a blow, an assault, and they came up with a metric for doing that. Those things are completely separate.
Let's ask it this way. Did you, on your slide presentation that you presented to this jury, did you put the inputs into F equals M times A in your slide presentation with the numbers we talked about of 15.7 for the M and 458 for the G to come up with 7,200? Was that anywhere on your slide presentation?
So the slide presentation showed the 458 Gs. The rest of it was not on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You also indicated that the laceration above Mr. O'Keefe's right eye is consistent with the shape and height of the fin on the top of the Lexus SUV. Do you recall that?
Correct. It's actually properly called a spoiler.
And so you would call it a spoiler instead of a fin?
Correct.
Fair enough. We'll call it a spoiler. You visited the scene at 34 Fairview, correct?
I did.
You stated that you like to visit the scene while you're working as an accident reconstructionist so you can get a better understanding of the data?
I'd use the word like, but we want to go to the scene to see the scene.
When you visited 34 Fairview, did you go into the garage at 34 Fairview?
No, I actually didn't set foot on the property.
You didn't set foot on the property.
No, I stayed in the street. It's my understanding there were new owners.
Did you consider the scene limited to the road?
So the access I had was to the road. The laser scanners and the photographs will extend further, but I didn't have access to the interior of the house.
Oh, so you didn't access the entire scene, correct?
In my opinion, I did access the entire scene. I didn't physically step 7 feet onto the grass to the point of rest, but I stood and photographed where that was. I didn't want to trespass.
Where did you understand the body of Mr. O'Keefe was located?
I know it was 7 feet in from the grass. I've seen cruiser camera showing people around a body. It's slightly north and slightly south and a little bit west of the flagpole.
But you didn't access that part of the scene that you just described, correct?
I absolutely did. I took photographs of it. I didn't trespass and stand at that exact location, but I stood right there. We scanned the whole thing. The scanner uses a laser beam that goes out, 150, 200, 300 feet. So we scanned all that stuff.
Did your scan topography?
Yes,
Then you know that there is a berm raised above street level, correct? If you did the scan.
correct.
Do you know the height of that berm?
I believe it's 4 inches.
Nowhere in your report, when you're comparing the height of Mr. O'Keefe to the spoiler, do you account for that 4 inches of the berm, do you?
So yes and no. As I indicated, we don't know exactly where the point of impact is, whether he was completely in the road or up on the berm. But for example, where the tire spins on the Lexus, that could be where she's driving up on the curb. And so then that tire will be at the height of the curb. So if he's standing on the higher part and the right rear tire of the Lexus goes up there and spins, then that would be at the same height. We don't know the exact point of impact. So I don't know whether he was on the road or in the street. Excuse me, on the street or on the side of the road.
Exactly, but when you did your depiction on your slide, and you remember you had the ruler and you measured the height, you did all
Absolutely.
that?
Yep,
Where was it? It was you? Was it you in that slide?
it was
Where were your feet?
on the ground.
Not on the berm, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you chose a measurement, which was the ground, to the top toward the spoiler, and you took a measurement. And you said that that approximates the height of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Of the laceration on Mr. O'Keefe.
Exactly, because what you were doing was you were trying to determine and present testimony on whether or not that laceration could be caused by the spoiler, and to do so you had to take measurements, correct?
Correct.
So, you chose to place Mr. O'Keefe in your simulation on the ground. You didn't choose to put him on a berm that would be 4 inches higher, did you?
Nor did I put the Lexus 4 inches higher. I didn't do
Correct.
either one of those.
So, the point is, it's certainly possible that if there's 4 to 5 more inches, that would take that eye out of the ability to be hit by the spoiler. Isn't that correct?
No, because if it's 4 to 5 inches higher and he leans his head down or reacts to it, again, we don't know the exact position of his head.
Did you, in your slide yesterday, describe the possibility that his head could be down? As I understand it, you're positioned in that photo just like this. You're not positioned like that in any photo you presented to the jury, were you?
Trying to make it clear, we don't know his exact body position at the point of impact, nor do we know the exact position on the ground. So, which is part of the reason why I haven't tried to exactly simulate this, because we don't have enough parameters to do that. So I don't have that information. I'm showing the geometry relative to someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height.
So you don't have the information to do that properly, so therefore you can't conclude that he had a laceration to the eye from the spoiler by your own answer that you just gave, correct?
So it was done properly. We don't have absolute information to say where exactly he was. I'm pointing out that the physical evidence, the height, matches the height of the laceration. That is one data point of many data points.
So you would have to at least concede that the level of his eye could be non-contacting that fin or spoiler because you don't have information as you just described. Is this
Sure, it could be from contacting the ground.
Pardon me?
It could be from contacting the ground. It could be from other things.
but you don't have the information necessary to conclude with any certainty that Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of impact, had a level of his head in an upright such that it hit that spoiler. You don't have that information, correct?
We don't have that level of certainty. We have that the height and geometry matches.
And you didn't take into consideration the berm, and you didn't mention the berm at all when you were discussing this measurement with the jury yesterday, correct?
That is not correct. You asked me 2 questions. I absolutely considered the berm. And the second question, when I presented it to the jury, I mentioned the berm when we showed the picture of the shoe in the snow, but that was it.
That's my question. I'll ask it a different way. When we were talking not about finding a shoe in the snow, and you mentioned a berm, I'm talking about when you did the measurement of whether or not the laceration could be caused by the spoiler. You didn't mention accounting for berm height when you discussed that measurement with the jury, did you?
That is correct.
Likewise, you didn't present any Newton's second law analysis regarding the front of Mr. O'Keefe's head with respect to whether his head was contacted by that spoiler, did you?
Correct. Again, it was a glancing hit. We wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, so it's a glancing hit to the front of the head is your hypothesis?
This whole pedestrian impact is a glancing hit.
So you can have your arm to the side like this, with the back of the vehicle coming like this, and you could glance the right eye with the arm out. Is that what you're saying?
That's what my picture shows when I'm standing next to the car. I could probably find the slide for you.
So you didn't do a force analysis to determine how much force would be applying, assuming a contact with the right eye, did you?
That's correct.
And force analysis is what biomechanists do, correct? That's what a biomechanist does?
That is part of what we
Part
do.
of what they do.
So I lined up his anthropometry relative to the known height of the vehicle.
You attempted to line it up. That's one method, but another method is to apply Newton's second law like you did to the back of the head when he fell, correct?
Correct, if we had more information.
Mr. Alessi, why don't we break here?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. So jurors, your lunches are here. We'll see you in 15 minutes.
Please rise for the jury.
Goodbye.